Hello, fellow book nerds. Are you ready for a really scary tale? Because we're talking about Juniper Thorn! Hello, fellow book nerds. This is Gabby, and today we are talking about Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reid. So, if you don't know, this is by the author of The Wolf and the Woodsman, which was a really good book I read last year, which I really enjoyed, and it was the author's debut. This is another book by the author. It's another dark fairy tale, and we are here to talk about it. So as per usual, let's start with a little bit of a synopsis. So in Juniper Thorn, it's a retelling of the Juniper Tree by Brothers Grimm, which I didn't even know was a thing till this afternoon when I was researching this. But it is a retelling. I have read the Wikipedia summary of the tale, and it seems like it's a very loose retelling, but took some really interesting parts from it, especially cannibalism. In Juniper and Thorn, we are following Marlichen, who is a daughter of the last wizard of Oblia. Oblia is the town they live in, so she lives with her father, the last wizard, and her two older sisters. So Marlichen, I think she's about 21 or 23 at the beginning of the book. She's always lived an incredibly sheltered life in terms of her father doesn't really let her or her sisters go out of their house. Their mother is dead, and they've been raised basically by their father, who's very controlling, very this is the way I want it, so this is the way it'll be. Their father actually got cursed when they were younger because he wanted to be the last wizard, so he got rid of the last witch, and with her dying breath she cursed him. So nothing will ever be good enough, quite literally, because the curse means that nothing will ever satisfy him. No matter how much he eats, he will always be hungry. No matter how many blankets he puts on himself, he'll always be cold. No matter how much his daughters try to please him, he'll never love them enough, or there'll never be enough. So that's kind of the setup, the family dynamics at play we have. And then when we kick off the book, Marlichen and her two older sisters secretly sneak out of the house in order to see a ballet performance because a famous ballet artist is performing, and Marlichen has never ever disobeyed her father before, never left the house without permission, although this is something her sisters have done before, and that's kind of what kicks off the main plot of this book. So that's what it's about. Let's dive into details. As per usual, we are starting with writing. Okay, so I think the writing was really powerful. It was so descriptive that everything felt so rich and decadent, and by rich and decadent I mean mostly gross stuff. The author really went on a lot of really metaphorical, beautiful, descriptive, rich descriptions of really disturbing stuff, and it was so haunting, and it's so hauntingly beautiful as well, because you're on this journey and you're kind of like, wow, this is a wild ass ride that I'm on right now. And I think the writing really portrayed or conveyed the atmosphere so well. It really put up these building blocks of just feeling so uneasy and uncomfortable, and you don't really know what the true story is and what's happening and what's real and what are dreams and that kind of stuff. It just felt so dark and depressing and small. Their house felt decrepit and falling apart. The town felt small and depressing as well. So I think the writing did an amazing job, and it really felt like reading a dark fairy tale with the way the descriptions work. And I said the same thing about The Wolf and the Woodsman, that it's a dark fairy tale, and 100% is. Both of the author's books have been inspired by fairy tales, so there's that. But it's just like how the author takes the language of the fairy tales and how we perceive fairy tales and what's typical for fairy tale writing, and puts it in this new, more modern language, but also the atmosphere and the disturbing hauntingness of it still remains. So I think the author did a really good job. The writing style, I have no complaints. I really like it. It's not like overly purple, although I do love purple writing, but I love it when it's like descriptive and beautiful, and we go on about color of blood for like a paragraph because we need to really understand how crimson it is. You know what I mean? So that's the kind of writing that I enjoyed, and it worked for me really well here as well. Plot. So I mentioned it's a retelling of the Juniper Tree. Again, I've not read it. Seems like a very, I've read the Wikipedia summary. Seems like a very loose inspirer. It mainly just Marlichen is called Marlichen. There's a lot of cannibalism. That's pretty much it. The whole plot itself was really interesting, and there was a really good feeling of uneasiness, hauntingness, like I mentioned already. And I think it's did a really, really good job of setting up all of these questions very subtly. Sometimes I didn't even clock that something got like this, like unveiled, you know, because it was just so subtle and so casual. The main character would just slip all of these casual facts that are disturbing as hell. And once you caught on and you really process what she said, you're like, it's mind-blowing. And then I like how there was mysteries and questions that I thought maybe were just like gonna be like, it's magic. You know, all this explanation in the book. It was magic. But everything tied together, everything came full circle, and everything we've come to understand. So I really, really liked that. I thought the plot was really tightly written, very purposeful, and clearly well thought out. So I really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed that we were dropped. Like, we got like 15, let's say we got like 20 hints dropped. I picked up maybe 10, 15 of them, and then the remaining 5 were a really great surprise. So I think the book did a really good job in that. I think it's fascinating that it's set in the same world as Wolf and the Woodsman. I didn't quite catch that, although I should have. I just didn't think about it too much. So now I'm like, wait, is it before or after? What's happening? I feel like I need to reread. Like, it's been so long since I read The Wolf and the Woodsman, because I read it like the week it came out. So I feel like I need a refresher just to understand, like, where does this fall into this whole like timeline in this world? And I need this world to like expand because it's really interesting. Alright, characters. So our main character, Marlichen, she is a very interesting protagonist, because when we first enter the book and the story, she is so out of the loop. And you only truly understand towards the end, like, how little she knew of what really was going on. And she's just so innocent, and she takes things at face value. If she's told something, she'll kind of take it as it was told to her. And people call her like plain-faced and stupid. And I don't think she's stupid, but towards the end of the book, I was questioning her intelligence. Not in a bad way, just like people were like, you're not very clever or insightful. And you know what? She's not very insightful. Like, she took things as they were presented to her, which I don't think is a bad quality, because, like, you know, you don't want to live your life thinking people will lie to you, but sometimes they do. And I'm sometimes like that. If someone tells me something, I'll be like, especially if someone I know and trust will tell me something, I'll be like, that's what it is. I'm not gonna question, why would you lie to me? Because I don't lie. What's the point? That was an interesting perspective to be in. And also, you know, just like how all of the themes tied into it. We'll talk about that a bit later, but she was an abused child, emotionally, physically, in so many ways. How that impacted her, and how that built her character, and how that made her into who she is, and took away her voice and agency and will to stand up for herself. I think that was really, really haunting, but important to see, but also really disturbing. Like, you don't want to be in that mindset, because you never had to be, and just so sad, but important at the same time. And I know the author said that this was close to their heart, so it's an important story. But at the same time, like, she just had such kindness. I really, really found her to have a really good heart. She can, you know, give back to people who mistreated her, and I think that's right, and that's justified. Like, I'm not saying she never did anything bad, but I think it was all very justified. And the core of her, she was a very kind and caring person, and that's why she wasn't necessarily looking for the worst in people or in their words, and questioning it too much, because she was just such a nice person. And I think I really love that. That was beautiful. Then we have Sevas. So Sebastian, I think, Sevas. He was very interesting as well, because we're introduced to him. So he's the ballet dancer that plays the main character when they go see a ballet. So we're introduced to him as this ethereal, powerful, graceful, beautiful creature, like leaping ballet and doing this amazing stunts and dance numbers and just being so captivating and beautiful and like I said, like ethereal, like something out of this world. And immediately after, we see him puke his cat's house on Marriage's shoes. So it's like you put him on the pedestal and you bring it out. And it was very interesting how that was also portrayed, and just how good of a main love interest he was, in the sense that his and Marichan's experiences, how they mirrored each other and how that all worked out. And just, I really liked him as a person. I thought it was great. I really, really appreciated everything about him. And I thought the relationship was actually pretty beautiful in what otherwise was a very grim story. So that was a really good time. Then the sisters, true to fairy tale fashion, they sucked. Pretty awful people, and I don't think it's clear just as how awful they are in the beginning. Then I think the father was fascinating, and his relationship with Marlichan was absolutely fascinating and just not fun. And how he had all of his daughters intimidated and under his thumb, and then also like how other people treated Marlichan. And it's kind of like how abuse cycles, you know, even abuse victims don't always want to support other victims. It was all very fascinating. Really interesting conversations were being had. So all of the characters, I would say, were very well-rounded and complex. For themes, I didn't know how to attempt this, and then I actually saw the author write out a list of content warnings, and I think they are very good indicators of what the themes are. So I'll read out some of them and maybe comment a little bit of it. But if you don't like knowing content warnings because you think they're spoilers, then maybe move on. But I do think for this book you need to know content warnings. So the offer out like gore and body horror, that's definitely one of them, and that was really, really interesting how that was handled. And I think with that, bulimia was a part of Marlichan characterization and what she was like, and that was really interesting to see how the bulimia and the eating disorder came into it with, you know, the body horror and gore and body horror. That was really, really fascinating. Definitely child abuse, big trigger warning for that, and very interesting conversations. I mentioned cannibalism, that was interesting. Anti-Semitism, so the author is part Jewish or Jewish descendants, I'm not sure. There's a group of characters called Yehudi who are Jewish, like coded Jewish, so that's interesting how they fit into the world. But it was really sad to see, you know, on the anti-Semitism, xenophobia, and then also it says that scientific racism, that was very interesting as well, how that was brought together. Gaslighting, yes, and then self-harm and animal death as well. So I think overall this book's themes were mainly around abuse for family members, gaslighting, and emotional, physical, sexual abuse, and how that impacts you as a person, as a human, and how that changes who you are fundamentally, and it impacts you, and how you get out of that and get back to yourself and who you are. And it was beautiful, it was haunting, it was sad. Overall, I did think this was a really well-written book, really interesting story. I don't know if I loved it quite as much as Wolf and the Woodsman. They were different, but it had all of those elements I loved in Wolf and the Woodsman, and it was so well-written. If you enjoy the idea of a dark fairy tale of horror and disturbing, and like, especially like psychological horror as well, I would pick up Juniper and Thorn. I give it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great time, and I would recommend it to people. I'll definitely make my list on horror recommendations, and I'll be thinking about this book for a very long time. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know if you read Juniper and Thorn. If yes, what did you think? I really hope you enjoyed my review. If you did, if you could comment, like, and subscribe, I really appreciate it. It really helps me out. But that's it from me, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!